Good morning and welcome to the live stream. G'day, Deborah. Yeah, it's Harry's live stream. I was hoping for this. It's nice to be, welcomed back in such a way. Thank you. Hopefully from now on we'll get back to the regular fortnightly sort of schedule, and that will continue as usual. Most of the issues in my life and other that relate more to other people, not myself so much, have sort of generally been resolved and all that. And yeah. Anyway, Izzy Doro, thanks for being here. Oops, that's me. And Troy. Troy's always a long time subscriber and supporter. Yes, from the land of Galvin. You mean your emperor, Galvin? Troy, get it right. He's magnanimous. Louise. Hola. Okay. Very excited. On choline, any benefits on supplementation? Many here would get from the diet alone. Thoughts on forms and dosages? Look, I tend to not recommend choline supplementation until somebody actually needs it. So you should be getting sufficient choline from, I do have a number of videos on choline. You can Google them and it actually shows the dosages, the amount in the actual animal foods, and most people get more than enough. Choline supplementation should only be used for people that have got gallbladder issues, that have got really genetics like I have. So I eat more eggs and tend to supplement if they have certain medical conditions that require more choline. So it really depends on the circumstances. And when people ask me and give me a bit of a rundown on their circumstances and stuff like that, then I usually say to them, and usually they leave a comment with, or they email me, and currently the email thing is shut down. I've overloaded it deliberately. Once I've sorted out what I need to sort out, I'm going to basically next weekend delete everything in there. So if I haven't replied to you, you'll have to reply with a new email. So sorry, but it's just I need to declutter it all and blow it all away and then just reset. So I've did that deliberately because I had a whole lot of issues that I had to deal with in my own personal life relating to people close to me. So those things have been all sorted out. And I can sort of now get back into my normal routine. So that's what's happening without giving too much of my personal details away in that regard. But so the thing is, people will ask me, they'll tell me their conditions, or they've done genetic tests, or they've noticed, I'm on a carnivore diet and I'm getting fatty liver. Well, if you're getting fatty liver, I think you should basically consider choline, because you may have the genetics that, and you need more choline. So whether you eat a bit of liver with more eggs, or whether you, eat foods that are high in choline, and there is that video, so people can go and take a look at it. Scotty, if Scotty's here, I've noticed, one of my moderators. So if you wouldn't mind posting that video on choline, then it has also in the description, it has from that site that actually has all the choline sort of foods and stuff like that. That'd be helpful. If you can't remember it off the top of your head, just tell me you can't, and I'll try and find it if necessary. But yeah, so really choline, we should not go over 4 grams because while some people can tolerate more than 4 grams, some people seem to get nausea and a number of symptoms. So there seems to be a bit of a genetic threshold. Exactly where there is, we don't have robust research. People just say, this is, thanks, Scotty. They'll argue that that you need this amount or that amount and all that. And I'm going, well, show me the evidence. It's a lot of the guidelines. There isn't really robust research. It's sort of, what is the general level in the population, the average, and that keeps on changing. And they keep on changing sort of the metrics. What doesn't kill you seems to be the base level that they consider okay. And I'm going, well, that's a bit illogical, but this is the modern world we live in. There is they can't argue from a scientific experimental position, as Bart would say, because they don't have any. That's the problem. All we have is some mechanistic studies and some short-term randomized control studies, and they tend to indicate an animal-based diet is best. And the mechanistic studies just provide a bit of illumination in understanding how certain pathways work. That it is quite poor. 99% of the research out there is piss poor. And even the ex-head of the New England Journal of Medicine, when she resigned, she said she was disgusted that most of the actual studies were so poor. But as long as they're getting funding from the food and big pharma, it seems that the party goes on for those sort of people. But getting back to your question, I would say that I tend to supplement. If I'm not having any eggs, not having any liver or eggs, I usually supplement about 1 gram. If you're dealing with excess estrogen or excess or mold exposure or whatever it is, you may need to take 2 or 3 grams in order to methylate away a lot of those toxins out of your system. And then you'd also take calcium D-glutarate to sort of make sure that it gets out of the system, because it actually works synergistically. So it depends on the circumstance of the person. I would say if you don't have the genetics, then 4 or 6 eggs a day should give you more than enough, because each egg has 149 point, like a large egg, 140, around about 149.7, I think it is, milligrams. So if you do that with times 4 eggs, that's about 598.8, which sort of for an adult is 550. So just 4 eggs will give you a whole daily dose. Plus meat also has. So if you eat quite a lot of meat, you'll probably get the same amount. So you're pretty much done. Most carnivores, if they eat, 4 to 6 eggs, because if you basically, let's say we go for 6 eggs, which is what I have a day. So I have a bit more than most people. So I have 6 eggs a day, which is 898.2 milligrams. Plus the meat, I get way over 1 gram is what I need, about 1 gram. So slightly double the RDI because of my genetics. So I usually have 6 eggs, quite a bit of meat in 1 meal, and I usually get my requirements based on my genetics. So really, most people do not need choline supplementation, even when they've got the genetics, if they're eating sufficient. I just sometimes get sick and tired of eating so many eggs constantly, and I'll may supplement. And I've got my supplement now. I have to check the date to make sure that it hasn't gone out of date, but it usually lasts for a long time. I get one that actually makes sure that it's got quite a few years into it, because I'm only doing 1 gram at most. I may, if I've been exposed to anything, I may take 2, but generally I just do 1 gram Dad's doing the same thing, 1 gram, because he doesn't eat enough eggs. He's sort of upped his eggs a bit now because he's got similar genetics to me. So he's doing about 2, 3 eggs sometimes. So I just give him 1 gram just to cover, to make sure that he's getting enough, because he doesn't eat like mega amounts of meat. That's why he gets, the other supplements like leucine. And it's just, a lot of people just don't do it, and you can't force them. So I try to force protein synthesis to maintain strong bones and muscles, because that's my only solution with my dad. I can't force him to basically eat more meat and eggs. It's just the way it is. So it depends on the circumstances in that regard. But I would never go over 4, and I'd keep it at max, even if somebody's dealing with, excess xenoestrogens. And that's the other thing. And also to the other reason is, if you go and do a test and you've got low folate levels, well, the way to spare folate and B12 is to basically supplement choline, because choline goes directly into the methionine cycle, and pretty much the choline, betaine, converts homocysteine back to methionine and spares the folate cycle from having to do a lot of work. And so you're sparing folate, you're sparing B12 for other biological functions, including bone. Bones require also B12. It's not only the brain and other things like that. So yeah, it's one way of actually, I use choline supplementation to fix my dad's pernicious anemia a decade ago. So, he'd gone too veggie on me at the time. Yes, again, it's a problem with a lot of older people. They think going veggie, they'll live longer. No, you only become osteoporotic and sarcopenic. Not a good idea. Frail, that is. So that's what he did. Anyway. And just just the stock standard stuff. The beetrate type, just the stock standard. You don't have to get anything fancy. The fancy stuff, even the stock standard stuff, if it's a clean one, yeah, and it's got no fillers, it's just pure choline, not a problem. Wouldn't worry too much. And just do 1 gram. And if you have a reason, like you're exposed to xenoestrogens, maybe from your work environment, maybe do 2. So depends. Pulley 77, how are you, mate? Nice. I can listen to a live stream while working right here in the UK. Night shift, late shift. Thanks for being here, mate. Go Ran. Hey, Harry, good luck with camera. Long time to see. Yes, yeah. Look, I get these glitches. What it does, it actually, the damn thing reverts to the other one and doesn't load my other camera. So I've got a laptop, and the laptop's got the old camera, but it doesn't actually, does only 480, where the other camera here does high definition. And so it reverts to the other one all the time. It is absolutely annoying when I get into StreamYard. Not always. Sometimes it actually, picks up the right one, but sometimes just, and I have to then unplug it, plug it in, unplug it the other one in order to get it to work, which is annoying to pick up the USB and then, so very annoying. Pat. Nathan. And super friends. Nice way to describe the Carnivore or followers. Fox, how are you as well? Oops. Oh, can't get Deborah to come up. No. I've been saving up my questions. Good. Only take choline if I'm not eating eggs. Good. Fair enough. That's what I do. But I have a genetic requirement. Otherwise, my homocysteine levels go slightly up. Not a lot, but they do go up. They used to go up far more in the past, and I used to have severe fatty liver. Probably the alcohol didn't help either, but it does help export fat out of the liver. So if you have issues with methylation, like I do, MTHFR and a lot of other, some of the choline genes as well. So I've got a lot of issues. It's just because my ancestors consumed more things like liver and animal foods that were rich in folate, choline, B12 and stuff like that. And the requirement is much higher for certain people. It's a bit like the beta carotene for the Irish and certain other Northern Europeans. Same reason. Consuming a lot of cod liver oil. Yes. Morning all, just dropped in by quickly as heading out for a family birthday celebration. Well, happy birthday to the person, whoever they are. Scotty. Louise, is glycogen in freshly cured meat an issue for Randall cycle? No, it's too little. Not an issue. So that one was an easy one. Paul Saldano says that honey increases testosterone in men and improves insulin sensitivity. True or false? I'd like to see the research. I've always said to the to people like Paul and people like Ray Pete, show me the research. They always come up with these ridiculous studies that are sort of fabricated, but show me the actual mechanistic research. Doesn't exist. So we know that basically when you like malnourished or under-eating, deliberately under-eating, it has a negative effect on testosterone, under-eating. So any amount, so if you eat, to the requirements of the body, you'll get an increase in testosterone. That's normal. It's why the vegans who are basically malnourishing themselves, traditional vegans who under-eat and stuff like that, or some people in the low carb, like keto community that, are doing more plant-based keto and are severely under-eating, because for them it's all the ketones, increasing fat oxidation and just the ketones, high ketones. Well, those people may be under-eating, B vitamins and a whole lot of other things and sufficient protein and things like that. And let's not forget, a lot of these hormones require cholesterol. Ketones aren't going to cut it. You require cholesterol in the diet. You require, a number of the amino acids. And if you're not getting enough of those things, then the body is going to go, well, I need cholesterol, amino acids, certain things specifically for the important functions of the body. And so I'm going to deprive other things that are less necessary. It's like, if you starve yourself, your endocrine system is going to be in the toilet. Your hormonal system is going to just be in the toilet. Why? Because, that's not a priority. Keeping you alive is a priority. And so, it doesn't matter what you eat. If you're getting enough nutrients in that the body requires, your testosterone will raise. Now, there can be a few things that actually can lower your testosterone. I've already made a video on that, covering that point. The things that can actually affect, but, to say that actually any food, if you're getting sufficient or slightly over the requirements, will basically raise testosterone. And testosterone varies. There's a circadian rhythm to it as well. So depending on when you're doing the test, and he is a doctor, he knows how that works. And he can plan to do a test at a specific time when his T is going to be the highest in the day, to go, look here. So anybody can fabricate anything on the internet. I go, show me the evidence scientifically, mechanistically. They can't. They always run away when I challenge them to do that. So it's bullshit. what they claim. Improving insulin sensitivity. Well, honey actually, because it's got more fructose, tends to not raise insulin as much. I don't consider that improving insulin sensitivity. Against what? The SAD diet? Obviously, it's going to be better than the SAD diet because the insulin to glucagon ratio is going to be lower. And glucagon tempers. So if you're having more animal foods that he does in his diet, it will raise glucagon. Glucagon will tend to temper down, hold down, that is, insulin to some extent. And because he's putting fructose and he's not putting a whole lot of glucose in there, he's putting mostly, and he's physically active. So he's taking up that glucose into glycogen stores that he is repleting. So he's in a low-grade Randall cycle activation, but still in a high level of glycation, and you can see it on his face. So he may be more insulin sensitive to a SAD dieter. That's true, and somebody that actually is a couch potato because he's doing a lot of physical activity. Like in the past, people ate some carbs and did a lot of physical activity and had really good sensitivity, and then became office workers and basically lost that sensitivity because they weren't as physically active. But how long can you sustain that? You can't sustain that into old age. You become weaker. You can't actually put your joints through so much punishment, and it will catch up to him eventually. That is the reality. He doesn't want to accept that reality. Fine. That's his problem if he doesn't want that. But to make claims that he does, N of ones, look, why don't you think I do any tests? Because anyone can fabricate anything. I show you scientific evidence and mechanistic studies. I don't sit around parading tests because I know they can be fabricated. I can, even though I tend to be not a hyper responder on the cholesterol front, I can actually push, I usually get about 3.7 or 4 point something millimoles in terms of my total cholesterol. I can push it really low, close to nearly the top of the twos. Why? Because I have the genetics, the ApoE genetics, and if I do the Feldman protocol, I can push it really low and then go parade and go, look how good my cholesterol is. It's nonsense, this sort of stuff that people do. So I usually say to people, you're wasting your time, and influencers that do that are doing that to manipulate people by saying, look, it happens to me, so it should happen to everyone. Bullshit. We don't share the same genetics. There's a whole lot of factors that are at play, lifestyle factors, physical activity, so many things that affect testosterone, sensitivity, insulin sensitivity, all sorts of things. It is absolute bullshit to make claims not based on experimental evidence or demonstrating mechanism. And that's why they always run with shit in their pants, because they can't make that. They can only make N of one claims and stuff like that. As I said, me and Bart don't do that sort of bullshit for the simple reason that we know it's bullshit. Because that's what everybody else, a lot of other people do. That is not the basis. We use the N15 archaeological evidence. We use sound science, sound mechanisms, sound archaeological evidence to base our arguments on these subject matters. All, Paul uses is basically bullshit like a lot of the others. He doesn't have strong evidence, and it's usually industry-funded shit as well, fabricated, and it's against whom? SAD dieters that are they comparing. So for me, that's just nonsense, the whole lot of it. I've had, arguments with these people, and I've called them out, I actually noticed that even on some of the repeat channels, me and Bart are considered, really, you can't talk to those people, and a whole lot of other things that where me and Bart are pseudoscientists, and a lot of other things, but they won't argue our points. They'll throw innuendos. They'll argue the person, like they'll have a go at me and Bart and call us all sorts of names, but they won't argue the points that I make. Why? Because they don't have the scientific understanding, or they don't have the evidence, or it goes against their narrative. So anyway, so it's BS pretty much. I can take taurine and leucine, but not all the time. Is there a reason? And is there a I mean, if you're eating enough meat, you should be getting enough leucine. And most people, if they're very healthy, Pat, are fine with basically getting enough taurine from animal foods. You know, it's usually when we've got pre-existing conditions and things that we're resolving and fixing and stuff like that. So, yes. And do put the Q in front. Yes, the Q is important to indicate that you're asking a question. Is supplementing alpha lipoic acid worth it? No. What about dosages? Look, I only recommend alpha lipoic acid because it does have side effects in high doses if used for the wrong reasons. Now, if you've got a reason for it, like you've got, let's say, a lot of oxidative stress in the body, or because it's like a big electron donor. If you've got like liver disease, like people that have got liver disease, I usually put them on high doses of alpha lipoic acid for a couple of months. But it depends on the circumstances of the person. I would never recommend. It would be basically, criminal for me to recommend alpha lipoic acid for people who don't have a medical reason for it. And mine is not based in it's not medical advice. It's based on the best science. And it's extrapolation of the best science that I provide the dosages and the requirements for it. So if you were to, let's say, took some mushrooms and got, liver poisoning, I'd make sure you were on alpha lipoic acid in high doses, because that's been shown in the past. I think it's one of the universities, I think it's a Texas University Hospital. I could be wrong. One of the universities in Texas that actually, one of the doctors, an innovative doctor, I forget his name, but he actually applied this to people that had actually taken the mushrooms and saved their life. And now I think it's still a standard practice in that medical facility beyond because I think he's passed away. That was quite a few years back in the past. So no, unless you need it. Otherwise, no. Is there or can there be any benefit to eating fat if you have fat to lose? Maybe the fat in the body isn't sort of everywhere required, made the junky food. Look, if you want to lose, there is what we call the cut. So you prime for a couple of weeks and really eat quite a bit to force up your metabolic rate and then cut, like the bodybuilders do. And if you want to really do it properly, Nathan, just approach Jonathan, do a consultancy with Jonathan, and he will put you on a meal plan and a plan to basically do this sort of priming and cutting that bodybuilders do to eliminate, the excess fat you may have. Just keep in mind, if you've had past exposure to high deuterium foods, it may not be a good idea to lose a lot because you'll do mitochondrial damage. I have made a video on that. You can actually look at, why the fat cells at losing weight can actually affect, help cancer. For the cancer people, it's in the cancer playlist, and do check it out. So do keep that in mind. I always say to people, if you're going to do like a big cut, consider doing a deuterium depletion water for a couple of months and then doing this sort of cut to dilute the amount of deuterium in your body. Anyway, my sister is on a T4 for hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, and partial thyroidectomy, and never felt great. She has gone carnivore and has been on and able to reduce her dose. Your thoughts on T4, T3, or pig Thyroid. Greg, there's a couple of peptides and all that. I am going to make some videos. I don't want to give too much information away, but yes, they do come from these sort of sources, and you can use those to help, definitely. One of the things, the big things with Hashimoto's thyroiditis is because of its autoimmune nature, is also re-regulating the immune system. And taurine and vitamin D, getting your vitamin D levels to the top of the normal is what Lukey, Luke Gear that comes on my channel occasionally, and he basically had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. He used to do a bit of, tried to build his muscles, but he couldn't. He was really, skinny legs and skinny arms and all that sort of stuff. He went on a carnivore diet. He got his vitamin D levels to the top of the normal and pretty much reversed his entire Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. And he was able to build, he's, quite muscular now and able to build a very muscular, strong body. So you can, with a carnivore diet and a good vitamin D level and some taurine, and he did also eventually he did some kefir and stuff like that to improve his gut microbiome and stuff like that. So there's a number of things. Now you can actually go onto the Discord, to Bart's Discord, and you can actually chat with both, because obviously I don't do consultancies because I've got a day job. I used to, and it nearly killed me. It's called burnout, guys. You end up burning out because it's just not possible. Let's be practical. You can't do too many things, and it's the reason why we haven't had live streams for a while, is because I've just been so busy with my own issues and family issues and stuff like that. So oops. Just trying to sort something out. Yeah. Let me just find it, the link. So this is the Discord. Oh, thanks. Jonathan. Good day, Jonathan. I just noticed. And thanks for the support as well. Okay. Okay, that's the Discord. You can go there and actually talk to Luke, and he'll give you a bit of an insight on what he did and stuff like that. So, because obviously, that's more of a consultancy question, and I don't have half an hour to go through all the nuancing and stuff like that, and he could do it for you. So do go to the Discord, and have a chat with Luke Gear. But yes, carnivore diet and improving your vitamin D status her vitamin D status will help her. Bingo, how are you? Yes, there haven't been many in between. That's true as well. Besides carnivore, what would you do to reverse periodontal gum disease? Look, there are toothpastes. There's two things you can do additional. You can actually get an oral microbiome supplement. So they do exist. I just off the top of my head at the moment, because it's on my computer at work. There's my home computer, so I'd have to find it. But there's a a list of certain bacterial strains that can help. I'll try and actually leave a comment in the after this video, and on Thursday. Yep, I'm working from home Monday and Tuesday because I've got a conference that I have to go to on Wednesday, so I won't be back in the office until Thursday. So on Thursday, which is a few days from now, 4 days from now, I will be able to reply with a link to a supplement for you, and that would help sort of sort out the oral microbiome. I just haven't made the video yet covering it. That's the only reason. So yes, useful. Yes, it's useful. But regulating the viroinflammasome, the immune system inside the gut, is the most important thing. And suppressing the pathogenic ones with Rutari and using it in a kefir after to grow it more is the thing that and then using the B vitamins and sometimes people need a broad spectrum bifidobacteria lactobacillus to sort of improve things. So it depends on everybody's circumstances. That's, like a sort of consultancy type thing, to go and see Bart or Jonathan, people like that, or to have a discussion with NecroKitty on the Discord. So NecroKitty is the other second person on there. She had a lot of gut issues, which I went through and developed a protocol with her. And she now has a document on Discord that people can go to Discord and get that document of exactly what worked for her. She had, really severe diarrhea. Then she went to constipation, and she's resolved all that following this protocol. So since I don't do those consultancies anymore because I just don't have the time, I usually direct people to Necro, and they get the document, and also they have a chat with her, and she'll discuss things like, what are your symptoms, because she's had similar symptoms, and it's sort of like her N of one and your N of one, sort of a collaborative thing. And I do that deliberately also because I want people to go to the Discord and support the Discord. So it's all about, supporting each other, this community, and getting the information you need. And that means I don't have to repeat myself or reinvent the wheel every time somebody asks me the same comment. Anyway, yeah, look, a lot of people do, over time do resolve it, because if you're not putting inappropriate foods in your mouth, it will resolve over time. So now let me go down to the super chats. Always learn a thing or two here. Thanks. You're welcome, Jonathan. Thanks for the £2. And Greg. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it for the 20 Aussie dollars. Yep. Now find my location. Oh, he's gone. Luckily, we've got Jonathan here for a while. Otherwise, I'll have to do moderation as well. I'm glad you're here, Todd. Thank you for coming. Thank you, and for appreciating my work. I'm just trying to get a lot of things out there for people to try and help them with their health, and also demystify a lot of things, because there's a lot of pseudo science and nonsense, and that we need to understand the core things that we as a species are adapted to, and then make some, use some biohacks and some other approaches when required to resolve our big issues that we've created via doing inappropriate things in the past. Sort of, you could say. Sort of, I've had an argument with people over certain compounds in mushrooms, and in the end, it came down to, it's sort of, I can't prove an exact mechanism. And I go, okay, so you've got no mechanism. So what is it? Oh, it's hormesis. And I go, well, I can exercise and get hormesis. I can get into a sauna and have hormesis. Why do I need to basically eat mushrooms? A fungus. So, that's where the whole conversation then ends, as you can understand, Deborah. So, yeah, there are people making all sorts of claims out there with zero proof in terms of mechanism. And I go, okay, mushrooms may have a benefit. I'm not claiming that they don't. I'm not claiming that they do, because I don't know personally. I know they do have certain compounds, and they do seem to upregulate certain pathways, but it's not clear whether they're doing something positive or negative, or they're just neutral. It's not very clear. We may find later on that there are certain compounds that really are very beneficial, but are not necessary unless you've got some underlying health issue, and then they are really useful, like medicinal usefulness, like tribal people have used plants and other things for medicinal purposes. I've always said plants are not food. They've got medicinal properties and can be useful in sort of forcing the body to do certain things. It's like, having elevated interleukin-6 continuously is not a good thing chronically, but raising it with a supplement periodically can be useful. Why? It can be useful for the simple reason that it can actually raise T cells. And what do T cells do? They can kill cancer cells. And they can do other things in the body, protect the body. So interleukin-6 isn't a bad thing. It's just, if it's deranged, it's a problem. But if it's actually working function, or you're modulating it to respond under certain circumstances, it can be useful. So there's always, like the TA1 peptide does that. And it's, a supplement that I haven't actually done a video yet on. I have recommended to one person, but she wasn't able to get it because customs confiscated it, which is, I've been trying to, help her improve T cell count. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. So people can make all sorts of claims. I always point them back. Please provide me the basis for that, the evidence. They can't. They just give me some bullshit reason. Oh, it's hormesis. Oh, yeah. I can hit you over the head and give you hormesis. That's comedy, people. That's comedy, humor. Just in case somebody gets triggered out there. Where's the N, Nick? The Q, I mean, the N. The Q, you've got the N in front of your name. What can a person do who can't adapt to taking in enough fat? I have this issue been kind of for 10 years, but has not improved my health. Go and consult with Bart or go and consult with Jonathan. You need to do that because there may be some reason it is impossible for me to diagnose you from a distance. It's impossible. There may be some reason why it's not working for you. You know, I don't know your circumstances, Nick, fully, gallbladder status, anything. You know, what could be causing this problems? Issues with your stomach acidity. Have you checked for H. pylori? Sometimes people can have H. pylori, which is suppressing their ability to absorb things properly and function properly. And they're unaware of it because they're not getting symptoms. Not everybody gets pain in their stomach, those sort of symptoms. You know, why? Don't ask me. But that could be, you know, you could have something like that. Have you checked to find out? You know? So, and that could actually then cause malabsorption issues and a whole lot of other things. And then really tank your, you know, thyroid function as well, because you're under eating constantly, well, you're under absorbing. So there's a whole lot of raft of things. You need to consult with someone to go through these things and determine what is driving the problem. You know, it's impossible to do it on a live stream. I'm just giving you some general things to go and consider and look into. But in the end of the day, you need to consult with someone who's knowledgeable and can actually then provide you with some guidance. I just eat the yolks. ATM seems to have got rid of dandruff. That's probably the biotin. Because, yeah. I've noticed I used to have bad dandruff as well, gone as well. So, anyway, physiology of rabbit starvation. Is it caused by protein metabolized differently in the absence of fat? You do need some fat to actually, you know, even if you've got enough body fat, you can, after about, I think it's about 3 days, 3 or 4, I think it's 3, you will get this, you know, if you've got really, one, you have to be lean. So if you've got a lot of body fat, you won't get this to the same level. You know, you can actually do it for a much longer period, but it has to be really lean meats where they've got practically next to no fat at all, you know, like glucose. So if you've got no glucose or fat coming in, this can actually happen with extremely lean foods, but it takes a couple of days, and it can take up to about, I think, 10 days, Stefanson said, to resolve completely. I think it was about 10 days, something along those lines. So, yeah, but that's just going off memory. It may have been slightly more than 10 days. I think it is 10 days. He had the symptoms about on the 3rd or 4th day. I just cannot remember. It's a long time ago. And then it sort of lasted for about 10 odd, maybe 10 plus days, maybe 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly, but the symptoms just came off. It was the acute type symptoms were in the early parts, like the first, towards after the 3-4 days, the symptoms were still quite elevated about 2 or 3 days after that, and by the 10th day or more, it pretty much went back. Yeah, it was back to normal in that regard. So yes, you do need a certain, and that's why even if you're, you know, cutting, you're not cutting out complete the intake of fat. You're just basically cutting back to a certain level. So you've primed, and then you basically, you know, trying to get more energy out of your own fat cells in a sense. So it's this sort of, so you're not constantly under eating or constantly overeating. You this sort of pulsatile and forcing the body to cut, then rebuild, cut, rebuild. There's a few tactics, and then there are extreme ones where you're still getting enough fat in, but it actually, with physical activity, because you have to combine it, it'll actually force extreme. But you need to go to somebody like Jonathan that knows what he's doing and go through the actual steps to do it properly, so you don't have issues. Anyway, all the super chat. God. Oops. 2 more. Tried looking for name. We'll give it up. Thank you for the $10. What are your thoughts on supplementing citrulline, TMG, creatine in addition to taurine? I'm working on various cardiovascular issues. Yeah, look, they're useful. They are useful. Citrulline is definitely an important vasodilator to use, which is important in that regard. Creatine can be useful if you're actually training. If you're not, probably you don't really need it. So if you're doing some training, it's probably not a bad idea to use creatine supplementation. So, but really at the end of the day, it's cleaning up the diet. Fundamentally, it's cleaning up the diet is your most important thing. Now, using vitamin D or getting out in the sun to get your vitamin D status up is important when it comes to cardiovascular health, with general health throughout the body. Also, it is important to get sufficient vitamin K2. That's why, for me, kefir is very important for those sort of things, plus adding back some of the important bacterial strains that we may have lost. These are all important to suppress the pathogenics with Reuteri and things like that. So it's a sort of a synergy of a lot of things in that regard. Don't worry too much. I don't know at what stage your cardiovascular issue is, but when you've got a lot of soft plaque in your system, your CAC score will go up. And that's a good thing because it's stabilizing. It's a bit like, when you cut yourself on your hand, you get that sort of wound heals, and there's actually calcium in that, and it's also just builds up, and then underneath it heals, and then it just drops off. It's the same thing inside because remember, your arteries are sort of a collagen sort of structure, a bit like your skin and all that, and the same thing happens. The injury happens, you get the seal that happens, and once you get the seal that happens, the calcium will build up, will stabilize that atheroma, and then so it's no longer soft plaque, because that's dangerous. That's what kills you. And then that stabilization, because you're not inflaming it anymore, and it can actually build up and all that. And that's what, statins, that's what they do as well. They calcify and stabilize soft plaque. So they can be useful for 6 months, as long as you're taking coenzyme Q10 and eating more cholesterol-rich foods and all that, because they do have a very negative effect on cholesterol synthesis in your body and coenzyme Q10, so that affects your energy production or the redox potential of your mitochondria, the electron chain. So not good things. But they do have a positive effect in the anti-inflammatory effect is that some people talk about is just piss weak. But the calcium stabilizing effect, where it increases your CAC score and it stabilizes the atheromas, that's a good thing, because it means you're not going to, and then as long as you're not inflaming it anymore with contraindicated seed oils and refined sugars and glycating honey, you know who you are, you people that eat your glycating things, that you call food items, and I call things that are contraindicated. So if you're not doing that, then eventually that will clear up over time. And as long as you're getting enough vitamin D and you're getting enough vitamin K2, which is easy to get on a carnivore diet, and you're able to regulate those mechanisms. And also taurine is important, because what it does is taurine has the effect in a fed state, not in an unfed state, but in a fed state. In an unfed state, it amplifies AMPK, which is the sort of catabolic pathways. It improves autophagy, it improves all that. But in a fed state, it does the complete opposite. It amplifies, it binds to mTOR in the bones in particular, but also in the muscles, but in particular in the bones, and amplifies protein synthesis and actually strengthens the bones, which means takes a lot of that calcium away and puts it into the bones. So it works together with the synergistic effects of bone growth and proper turnover and regulation, because you're also, with the fat soluble vitamins of vitamin D and retinol, vitamin A, you're regulating the matrix metalloproteinases, which is the collagen degrading enzymes, to be within a certain physiological range and not outside it, to cause derangements to the bones and things like that, or other tissue as well. These are produced in the liver. And by having this synergy, as I call it, sun, salt, and meat, you end up in a better place in that regard. So all these supplements can help, but ultimately you need to keep the inflammation down. And the two key ones here would be citrulline for vasodilation and taurine. I would also practice a lot of earthing, because what earthing does is, I actually did also alpha lipoic acid for a period of time to put a lot of, because it's a master electron donor, to stabilize a lot of the tissue that had been inflamed in my vascular tree, the arteries and veins, the vascular tree, the arteries primarily. So where there had been a lot of inflammation and a lot of loss of electrons, I was able to put them back, because that's what an antioxidant is. And so it is a very powerful one, alpha lipoic acid. You do it for a couple of months and that's all. And then you try and actually do a lot of earthing, because earthing has two effects. One, it actually gives you free electrons from the earth to stabilize your tissue. The second thing that it does, it also provides this sort of negative charge. So, well, because of electroneutrality in the body, this negative charge is very low, in terms of it's close to zero nearly, because of electroneutrality. I'm not going to get into the physics to explain electroneutrality. Barkay does have a video, but what it has an effect is that this negative charge, there are little hairline structures within your arteries and around things like lipoproteins and a whole lot of things. And if you look at they have this little, even the bacteria have this little hairline thing. That's the thing that actually cleaves off and creates can create inflammation. That's the lipopolysaccharides, the thing that Grundy and other people's talk about. But what that does is actually make sure that the bacteria actually can get that negative charge, so it doesn't stick, so it can actually move around. And that's what all these other things. And so that means you get less in your blood vessels, you get less clumpiness. Things sort of are separated and can move around. That means you get better oxygenation, which is important for the proper functioning of your cells. So low oxygen levels, hypoxia, are very bad, chronically. So it improves oxygenation. We know oxygen therapy is very useful for a lot of conditions. So all these sort of things can actually improve, but my key things are fix up your circadian rhythms, your light, blue blocking glasses like those, and my evening pair like this one. And as long as you basically make those shifts, if you've got any other questions in terms of the sort of K2 supplements and stuff like that, after next weekend, I'm going to clear out all my entirely the whole lot of my email account, and I'll be back in business in accepting emails from people, and send me something then. So next sort of like think of next 8 days time, and tell me all your circumstances quite clearly, at what stage you are, and a whole lot of things. Details, I need details. Obviously, I don't want you putting personal stuff here on in a live stream, but provide me with a lot of details in where you are, what your measurements have been, what your cardiologists have said, all that sort of stuff. And then I'll give you a proper plan that I've used to go through and respond. There will be a video eventually at some future date, but currently, I'm involved with doing things on cancer and other things, because there's a lot of people that have got those issues, and I'm sort of focused on that. And once we'll move on to cardiovascular eventually, and then later on strokes and things like that, because they all need to be covered in a comprehensive way. Now, there was another one. There it is. And no question. Todd, thank you. Appreciate it. And you did make a comment up here. Thank you. Appreciate it for being here and supporting this live stream. Now we'll move down here to Ben. Oops, nope, I've already answered that. Ben. Hey, when it does that, it just bounces back. I did some testing and found my body is full of bromide. Lifetime of asthma, inhalers I blame. Okay, so that sort of stuff. Any questions are clear? Well, if you're going to do that, you will need to use iodine to sort of try and clear some of that sort of stuff out. It does help. And also you may need to supplement something like choline for a while, because that'll help push things through into your bile. And then in order to prevent reabsorption, you'll have to use a supplement called calcium D-glutarate. What it does is it prevents reabsorption of a lot of this toxic crap. And so that should, within a couple of months, clear out of your system. So leave me a comment, Ben, at the end of this video, and I will actually give you a list of the supplements, okay, things to take. So that'll make it easier for you. Oops, what is it doing? Click your damn thing. Click. What are your thoughts on fecal transplants? I think they do have risks. Shoving somebody else's poo up your rear end, there is the potential for getting other pathogens from the other person. They do say that they follow protocols to make sure that it never happens, but it has happened sometimes. It's mentally, I've been on the fence on this issue for a long time. And the reason for that is I do see a benefit in it. I know the rat studies where they can actually change the gut microbiome of one rat to the other, and actually can be quite beneficial. And there has been a lot of positive things that have happened for some people that have got really poor microbiome sort of status. In particular, if somebody's lost, like they've lost their their appendix. Now, your appendix is the old cecum, and that's where it held your gut microbiome. So even when you take antibiotics, if you're going to restore, it restores from that reservoir of bacteria. So people that don't have that would get the biggest benefit, but there is a risk. I have to be honest about that. There is a risk of other infections. That's all I can say. And this is not medical advice, guys. It's just basically my opinion on how I sort of feel about it. I'm not lukewarm about it, in a sense. Lukewarm. What a term to use on the subject matter, on a subject of shit. Yeah. Look, there are risks. Let me just put it like that. If people are contemplating using, because I've got severe derangements, I always will say to the people, do a broad spectrum bifidobacteria, a broad spectrum lactobacillus, do a kefir in there, do the B 3 months, the B complex, make sure that the pantothenic acid of that supplement is very low, is the lowest you can find, because that is the problem with the cells in the back here that can actually be affected from too much excessive amount of stored. I have done a video on the Odyssey side about stored, I may have to do another one at some stage on pantothenic acid that does store to some extent. It wasn't considered, but there's an old research. And so that can be a problem if you've got excess causing, that's B5. Excess B5 can actually cause insomnia type symptoms. So it can be a problem. And so, but taking for that sort of period to be able to provide the B vitamins for those beneficial bacteria that tend to utilize them and swap, and giving them vitamin D because they need as well some vitamin D. They can also do with vitamin D2 as well. They can use that. They can use either one very effectively. So where for us, vitamin D2 from plants is very poorly absorbed and utilized, but bacteria can utilize it quite well. So those sort of things can actually help remodulate the gut microbiome, plus inflammasome that actually has a direct effect through AMP. And taurine is the one that regulates that, and that's in my digestive issues and the microbiome playlist. You'll find that. Yeah, I'd rather people try that, and if that didn't work, all that sort of stuff, then consider this as a sort of a last resort, and be aware that there are risks. I think that's my final answer on that. I've been skirting around that because I'm still partially on the fence on the whole issue. But if people are desperate, they've tried everything. Yeah, but there are risks entailed. I'm not a fan or 100% convinced that it's the right way to go. Yeah. Anyway, g'day, Gary. It's been a while. Oh, you're talking about Greg's sister. Okay. Yep. Thyroid issue. Look, it can be tricky. That's true. It can be tricky, even for a physician that's experienced in it. Can be tricky with these sort of things. Ultimately, I think if you're on a species appropriate diet, ultimately, if you get your vitamin D status up and you try and re-regulate your body, it sometimes resolves all on its own. There can be certain circumstances where, people have had certain things done to them that then can actually affect them. They may have had some surgical intervention in the thyroid. When that happens, it's really hard for me to get, I usually say to people, fix everything else and then take a low dose of something, of one of these potential medicines you may need, because you can't get that extra amount from the physiology because of the alteration that's actually happened to your body. And I can't alter that. It's happened. There is no supplement to reverse it. So I'm always cognitive of that. I'm aware of, like people that come to me that have had, some surgical intervention in their gut. And I go, well, now you're malnourished and you're not absorbing things. And I usually say, well, your only option now is to use the expensive method, which is using a liposomal, which can be absorbed. So liposomal vitamins and trace minerals and stuff like that. And they are expensive to take for the rest of your life in order to make sure that you're absorbing sufficient micronutrients. But that's the only option you've got, because, I can't reverse what you've done surgically to yourself. So there's those sort of things that people need to be aware before making these life-changing decisions. And people make them all the time, and it just baffles me that they don't think about the long-term consequences of those steps. These things are not easily reversible once done. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it. Oops. Any issue with consuming tripe? Yeah, I know what. I've actually eaten it in the past. It was fed to me multiple times by my mother. That's been bleached white. Well, yeah, she used to clean it until it was white. It didn't seem to kill me. I'm not a big fan of tripe. Let me put it that way. But it's it's fine. My choline bag smells rotten, fishy, British company bulk. Okay, maybe throw it out if it's gone bad. Yeah, I tend to. Let me just find the brand that I get. Oops. So choline bitartrate. This one is from NutriCost. Yeah. And this powder has nothing else in it. Absolutely just, and no other fillers. And as you can see, 1 gram lasts you for ages and ages and ages, because we're talking about Anyway, just give me a second. I'm just going to pop out and pop back in because I'm getting some feedback noise on StreamYard. So I'm just going to, I'll be back. I'm just going to pop out. I'm not stopping the stream. I'm just going to come back because it's somehow not doing. So I'm going to count to about 20, 30 seconds. So just give me a second till I can get rid of this. I'll be getting this hissy noise coming through. So just bear with me. I'll be back. Yes, last famous words. Whoops, that didn't do it. Let me just try this again. That seems better. Anyway, yeah. Try the other supplement because I've never had any problems with this supplement. It's always been really, really good. Greg's sister thyroid sounds like be a handful for any physician to manage. Getting TSH right would probably be a main aim, if that's okay, and still feel crap. Yeah, it's definitely, these sort of things are definitely sort of consultancies and stuff like that. And you need details to diagnose. And it's really hard to do it from a live stream or from a distance in that regard. So you usually end up having to do like a Zoom session and go through the history of the person and all that. Most people will send me just an email. They'll provide all the information and then I'll reply back to them. But I have to have details. And sometimes if they don't give me sufficient details, some of you have already known that, I'll send you back and say, well, please explain, provide me some additional information. And I do that with some comments. You've probably noticed, some of you, because if I don't have enough information, I just can't. And it's for some things, it's easy to diagnose from a distance, just from the symptoms and some of the actual readings that people have. Other things are really hard, as Gary knows, because he's in the medical field, and it's not easy to do to get these things. But I always say the core thing is get a carnivore diet that actually cleans up a lot of this stuff, get your vitamin D levels high, and start getting some good nutrition in there, and things start re-regulating themselves. But if somebody's actually done some, I think he mentioned something like some sort of resection on the thyroid and all that, and if you've done some alteration or that becomes really hard. That means you need to do everything right, get a baseline, and then go back to your doctor and make any adjustments. So after testing. So those are, it's a much more complicated approach. and something nobody on social media can do for you, as Gary correctly points out. Physicians struggle with this sort of stuff, let alone the rest of us. Thoughts on megadosing methamphetamine to clear glycation? No, I'm not a fan. I'm not a big fan. I know Elliot is, but I'm not. Glycation, I actually think the best thing to lower glycation is taurine. If you're going to megadose anything without causing any other derangements, taurine would be the safer way to go on glycation. So that's my personal opinion on that. Look, he may have, there are people that have certain higher requirements for thiamine and also for niacin. And so for those people, they can actually get a bit of a benefit. So I'm one of those people that actually requires a bit more niacin. And so I end up eating more animal foods like piggy, like pork that's got slightly more both thiamine and niacin. Plus I occasionally have a bit of niacin supplementation, which is a pharmaceutical grade that's produced here in Australia, which is guaranteed. The dose is guaranteed. It's not like, because it goes through the TGA, which is similar to the FDA in America. The dose has to be specific. It is slightly more expensive, and it's a pharmacy grade. It's not a general supplement that is, whatever the company says it is. This has to be exactly 250 milligrams. It cannot be any more or less than what it actually says. So that's why I purchased the one that I purchased. I've shown it on other live streams before. If anybody wants it, just leave a comment and I'll post a link. I'll have to try and find it. The link, the government link for the brand, but pharmacies around Australia do provide it. Now, overseas, I've got no idea. There are some online pharmacies, Australian pharmacies, that do sell the product overseas, but I don't know which ones they are. And some pharmacies won't give it to you unless you've got a prescription from a doctor. Others will give it to you. So I got it because at the time I said to my doctor, I'm not taking statins. And so that was the next option for me. So I don't think everybody's got a thiamine deficiency and they need to take, and taurine is a better anti-glycating thing. Plus the body will clear out glycation over time if you're on a species appropriate diet. As long as you're not doing any more damage, unless you're guzzling down honey, which is highly glycating. So honey's fine to put on your skin. It has some beneficial effects in terms of antimicrobial effects, or put in some warm water when you've got a throat infection and gargle it. Don't swallow. Remember what, was it President Clinton that actually said that? But he never inhaled? Or did Monica not swallow? It's a long time. It's a long time in the past. Yes, don't do any of that sort of stuff. Her doctor won't measure those. Look, it's so her TSH. Yeah. Look, the problem is the medical community is so fixated on TSH. So that's the big problem. But a carnivore diet actually will, compared to a ketogenic diet, so if you do a sort of more plant-based, not enough protein, not enough, too many plants and all that, and very catabolic type, you will increase your reverse T3 quite much higher. And that, if you do it chronically for a very long time, is contraindicated. That's why we're against it, me and Bart, quite vehemently against it. But if you consume sufficient animal foods, the reverse T3 tends to go down. It's not as high. And some of it is required because it actually spares the muscles. So you don't actually, waste away your muscles in a low carbohydrate state. So it's a sort of a protective mechanism. So it's not a bad thing, for people to say it's a bad thing in that regard. But in the end of the day, it's how you feel. And I think you really need to get the right nutrition in to try and actually make sure that everything's working properly. You may need, sometimes for these things, it may not even be, let's say you resolve your Hashimoto's. I've had people, they've resolved their Hashimoto's and all that, but they've been selenium and iodine deficient. And once they actually, because I've actually done videos on selenium, and I've done, one of my earliest ones was on selenium in a lot of the seafood, and a lot of the actual crustaceans are very high in selenium, plus iodine. So you can actually include some of those foods in your carnivore diet, and what will happen is your selenium, because remember you need both selenium and iodine in your thyroid. And if you've got very low selenium, very high iodine, it can be a problem. But you can actually have slightly higher intake of iodine, but if you've got good levels of selenium, it doesn't become a problem. So there's a lot of reasons, nuancing, please people, nuancing. So if you're basically, dealing with certain things and you want to flush them out, halogens in particular, flush them out, you may have to do slightly higher, iodine, so those are sort of issues that people can resolve. But then that could be a problem if you're taking higher doses of iodine. Throw in selenium, fixes, seems to normalize the things as well. So, and there are other lesser, like zinc is an important thing. So a few other of the minerals are also required for the proper functioning of the thyroid. And also not too much calcium in the thyroid can be a problem as well. And there, taurine can regulate calcium homeostasis because it affects, it's a sort of a natural calcium channel blocker. That's how it lowers also, the level of blood pressure. But also what it also does is make sure that at the cell membrane, it maintains a certain level of, the right transfer between the ion channels of that the right amount of magnesium, potassium is inside the cell, and the right amount of calcium and sodium is inside the bloodstream. So there needs to be more of those and the right ion transfers that happen, so there is a sort of electron neutrality maintained, is largely regulated by the osmolyte called taurine. And that's why it's very, very important. So very important. So it is a bit more nuanced in that regard. And as you said, a normal doesn't really tell you everything. There are other factors. So you can, some naturopaths do some assays on, like you do your hair, not blood, don't do blood for minerals, do hair mineral analysis, will give you more information about exactly where your selenium levels are and all these other things. So she probably needs to do those things to find out exactly where those things are, because it could be just a selenium deficiency potentially. Or she may have had some virus or whatever, or some senescent cells, slightly more. Some people, I'm not saying that your sister's got this problem, but some people that have got some precancerous situations, they also can actually have a depletion of selenium, because it's used, with the immune system to fight cancer. So it's unnecessary. So things can go down for a whole lot of reasons, fighting viruses and other things in the environmental exposures. Very hard unless I know what somebody's lifestyle is and a bit of a history. I'm just speculating now. Just keep that in mind. It's speculations on my part that these could be certain level of micronutrient deficiencies. They need to be tested and checked to find out exactly where your levels are or her levels are to basically do the appropriate things for her. Yes, exactly. Yes, not looking very good. Yeah. I always say, look at me, Bart, a year ago, 2 years ago, it's not much difference. Yeah, he's really gone off the rails big time. His skin really looks bad. It looks aged. Glycated. Yes. Yes, he's putting the honey in the wrong place. Not on his skin, but inside his body. What's on Harry's Black Friday gadget shopping list? What's on Harry's? Nothing at the moment. Didn't even know there was a Black Friday sale. Is there? Did I miss it? Or so nothing at the moment. The only things I do have to get is a couple of supplements for the old man, the body protection compound 157 for him. And a couple of other supplements as well that I need to get him. I think it's some taurine I need to get him and a couple of others. I had to give him one of my taurines, so I'll have to replace one of mine as well. So he ran out. So I just gave it to him. Well, he cooks for me now and then. He does things. So I'm actually I'm having lunch with him today, so he'll be cooking. So, yes, he does feed me occasionally. Your thoughts on fasting autophagy for loose skin? I see lots of claims for our community, but little evidence. Yeah, there's a lot of claims, but loose skin is a hard one because there is a genetic base for it. And some people, I think, I'm going to have I've got a video coming out, and that will be, I think, Friday. And it actually talks about my ancestry and talks about some of my genetic traits. And that's one thing that I don't get. I've got genetics that don't give me loose skin. Some people do have, and they're more susceptible in that regard. Now, if you're doing some fasting, it seems to help some people. There is no scientific evidence out there. There is no proof that it does work for everyone. So all I can say is that, maybe for some people, but do we have like real solid proof? No, we don't. And it's something that I haven't really looked into deeply myself at all, because it wasn't an issue for me, and because of the genetics. So it never happened to me when I lost weight. So yeah, I'll add it to my list of things to look into. That's all I can give you at the moment, Nathan. I'll add it to my list to investigate and actually do a thorough investigation of the literature at some point. I'll do it next year, and I'll, early next year, probably January or February, I'll bring something out on this subject matter, but I'll go do a deep dive and look at all the claims and all the evidence and see what there is. There may be stuff, there may be nothing, it's just bullshit and, just industry promoted rubbish because they want to sell product. That is another possibility. I wouldn't be surprised. But I don't know enough to basically, and I don't think most people know enough. And look, I've heard people ask me this before and other people making claims, but each time I ask them, I go, well, based on what research did you find? And they usually, that's when they go quiet, and I realize they got nothing. Okay, you got nothing. Oh, I've got anecdotes. They go, well, you got nothing then. Okay. And I just walk away because I don't want to fight for no good reason, just because some people want to be stupid about it. Because they usually are. They just dig the hole, as Bart Kay says, even though they know they'll defend their flag until the last breath. That's why in science they usually say that science progresses one death at a time, because some people are so pig-headed and unwilling to accept that they are wrong, they will fight you to the death, to their death, or whoever comes first. It's ridiculous. So you just have to walk away and say, well, you got no evidence. Goodbye. And Jonathan's here. I did spot you earlier, and you have gave a donation as well, which is thank you again. If you've got fatty liver, you should be doing choline supplementation, because you may have those genetics that I had as well. And you can't export fat out of the liver efficiently. You need slightly more. Don't go crazy. Stick to about 1 gram. And the link's towards the end of the actual chat. You'll find the link there. Go to bed, Jonathan. Yes, he probably does. It's probably quite late in the UK at the moment. G'day, Raymond. In the low-carb community, I hear that fructose is converted to fat. Yes, in the liver, it uses the same pathway, same enzymatic pathways that alcohol uses. Exactly the same. And it also it has effects on the mitochondria, negative effects on the mitochondria in a number of ways. It sort of has an effect in inhibiting sort of energy production. And on the other hand, also, fructose is where the fructose part of the sugar is the part that has the highest concentration in nature of deuterium. So all the plants, when they actually and that's why it's used as a growth factor, and it's put into the fructose part is the highest concentration. And so, so you're getting higher deuterium, which isn't good for the nanomotors in your mitochondria. It's inhibiting the functioning at the enzymatic level. I believe it affects 3 enzymatic stages of energy production, and pretty much, so it has a negative effect, and that does it deliberately. So because if you're not using it, what are you doing? You're storing it. Got it? So it forces to store. Now, if you're physically active and you convert it to triglycerides, it goes back and gets converted to trigs, then you'll probably use that energy that you've just produced. Why? And the body will prioritize that because it wants to get rid of it. The first thing that actually prioritizes is toxins like alcohol, then fructose, then glucose, then everything else. Got it? It's usually in that order. So, fructose is basically goes through the same enzymatic pathways inside the liver to convert it to fat. That is why high fructose corn syrup, when given to kids in experiments, will raise their liver fat, and so will alcohol. That's what's called non-alcoholic liver disease. And that comes from high fructose, or, a lot of kids drinking a lot of the sodas with a lot of fructose in it, sugar. That's where it came from. So it's not a good idea. It's definitely not a health food. And that's why I say fruit is the worst carbohydrate you can eat. And people look at me funny because they think it's a health food. And I go, no, it's not. I said, everything in nature uses fructose to fatten up. You know, in the Amazon, when it floods twice a year, what happens? These fish swim up and eat fruit. Why? To fatten up and become big and fat. That's what they do. They use it as a growth factor. You know, everything in nature uses it. Even we, in the interglacial periods as tribal people, consume a lot of fatty animals at the end of, the summer, in the early part of the fall, when they're fattened up. We combine fruit and that at the same time engage the Randle cycle, increase the amount of adipose tissue, fat, on us, so we can actually survive the leaner periods in the drier or winter months, depending on where you are on the planet. That's what happens, and that's what's been happening for thousands of years. We've just basically now in the modern era, with the refrigeration and modern transport systems and storage, we've been able to provide it all year round. Fruit, sugar, all year round at higher and higher amounts. That's the only thing that's changed. And that's why we've seen since the 70s this explosion in disease. It's not accidental. You know, up until then, all we saw was cardiovascular disease and things like that. And that was primarily from seed oils and tobacco smoking. But the sort of, all the other derangements that took off that sort of amplified that was, a lot of the refined carbohydrates, and in particular, more sugar in the diet. And people say, well, the sugar levels in the US have actually declined. Yes, the sugar levels have, but they forget that the high fructose corn syrup that replaced the sugar, because they couldn't actually now import it from places like, remember their old US colony, which was Cuba? They couldn't get it out of Cuba anymore. And so what happened is they had to come up with some other new invention. The Japanese came up and American companies bought into it. Even the Japanese did tests on animals and realized that high fructose corn syrup was actually worse than actual, table sugar. And went, oh shit. And that's why they never used it. And they sold the patents to the Americans, and they actually ended up using it because they don't care. They just want to make money. So these are the differences, and that's where we see this explosion in fatty liver. So it's definitely, and Robert Lustig, he's actually done some research. He's an endocrinologist in the US, and he's done some research in regards to fructose and glucose comparisons. So what he did was he did experiments on these young kids. So he had two groups of kids. He measured them at baseline where their liver fat was. And then one group, he removed entirely, he removed all the fructose. And these kids were just having refined carbohydrates. We're talking about just junk food, like bagels and stuff like this. We're not talking about health foods here, junk food. But the one had completely only 100% glucose, and the other one had glucose and it still had glucose and fructose. Guess what happened after a couple of weeks when they retested these kids? The kids that were on the pure glucose, they had to actually increase the amount of food to give them because they were losing weight. And people would say, oh, these kids lost weight. That is why, because of the, you don't get the engagement of the Randle cycle because you're basically on a low fat sort of thing because you're eating primarily, glucose. And if you take away the fructose, the thing that generates the fat, you're basically going to be, not being able to store. You'll basically start in between meals using up more of your own body fat and losing. Now, in order to basically remain weight stable, so nobody could claim that these kids lost weight and that's why their liver improved, he actually had to increase the amount of food he gave them compared to the other group that was consuming the fructose. And still these kids' liver fat went down, because glucose, while it is contraindicated in a Randall cycle, when you put glucose and fat together, you engage the Randall cycle and all that. But in that low fat state, you're not engaging the Randall cycle, or at a very low gradient, you actually see liver fat go down. And that's exactly what happened. Liver fat went down. So they were using that as a fuel. And the other kids, their liver fat went up, the ones that were on the fructose. And it was quite clear that the fructose was driving liver fat accumulation. And we see it in animals, in nature. That's how they fatten up. Humans, that's how they fatten up, eating fruit, seasonal fruit, with fatty animals at the end of the summer and early parts of the autumn, the fall. It's been happening for thousands of years. Why would it be any different? Tribal people deliberately eat fruit in that seasonal period, and honey. Why? For one and only reason: to put on fat stores, because they don't have a supermarket or a fridge they can go to. They need, in the leaner times, to have body fat, because that's stored, that stored mass of food energy for the production of ATP when they're not getting enough in the diet in those leaner periods. It's a survival strategy. But, something that we've actually put on steroids in the modern era 24/7, 365 days a year. Well, that's why we're in this terrible mess of health problems. So, but is glucose the best fuel? No, because it is higher in deuterium, and it also is higher it doesn't have the same glycating effects, but it still has some. So it's not perfect. Got it? Anyway, oops. What is it doing? Also, are you familiar with a recent study showing that most of the conversions happen at the level of small intestine rather than the liver, up to doses of 1 gram of fructose per kilo of body weight? I'm not convinced of those studies, because the way they were deliberately done in these small increments. And so they're extrapolating. And a lot of them were actually done not in humans, they were actually done in rats, and rats have a different physiology than us. So I haven't seen any recent stuff. I have seen some stuff. What do you mean by recent? 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 1 month ago? Just let me know in the chat box. But unlikely, because it doesn't actually flow from the arguments, to say that, because usually what they do is they extrapolate that from 1 kilo body weight, from the rats. It's rat studies. And as far as I'm concerned, they are BS, because rats can't even get into ketosis unless you push them to 90% and literally remove nearly all the protein out, and have no glucose or fructose coming in, practically very little protein and massive amounts of fat, and only then do you get them partially into ketosis. So their physiology is completely different than us, and they can consume, and they do metabolize, rats, far more stuff in their gut as well, because they've got completely different enzymatic pathways. So not the same. And if it's rat studies, I'm familiar with those rat studies, and they're bullshit. I always say, show me the human studies. If they're human studies, I'd be really interested to see, even though, because I find it unlikely, and even if it's, let's say, it is in the actual small intestine. What does it turn into? What does it turn into? Does it turn into fat or some other sugar? And I would like to know the mechanism. I suspect it's some sort of food industry works. They do these deliberate studies, and this is not the first time the food industry has been demonizing fat and doing these nefarious bullshit, these clamps and all sorts of things. It's all make believe in order to show that fructose, that sugar is fine. Because remember, there's a big sugar lobby in Australia and elsewhere, and I've had arguments with some of the academics out of Sydney University on this issue, and I know that they are fabricating the evidence in order to push their industry. And these academics are actually on the council, the Sugar Council of Australia. They're basically just dodgy as dog shit. I wouldn't trust anything that these people did. So I always look at who are the people where they're getting their funding and money, because today's science is very corrupt, unfortunately, and because Lustig has actually done it on kids, actual kids, and seen this. Why didn't it happen to them? He wasn't giving them massive amounts of fructose. How come liver fat was going up? If this argument is legit, it's not. It's probably fabricated, like all the other bullshit that the actual food industry creates. Because when people do things without any funding from big food, they find the complete opposite. And we know, because every single bloody animal, even veterinary people that do veterinary science, know that every single animal fattens up on fructose. It's well known. It's only the food industry that tells us that it's not the same. What a load of bullshit. Very annoying. Nick. Doctor was freaking out. Who cares what the doctor was doing? The doctors have got no idea about any of this sort of stuff. They're in the dark age when it comes to these sort of things. So I wouldn't be concerned. You're a hyper-responder. Who cares? It's pretty much irrelevant. That's why I've never had my doctor argue with me about statins. But that's because of my ApoE, my genetics. And I don't, So is what it is. But I'm doing the same diet as you. But I'm responding very differently because of my genetics. Doesn't make any difference. Your genetics means that you're taking up fat from chylomicrons so fast you can't afford to even have a gram of sugar in your liver. I'm taking it up very slowly, which means I can tolerate sugar a bit more because I can clear it out and then take up the remnants of chylomicrons at a much slower rate. So I don't engage the Randall cycle inside the liver and create liver fat or inflammation. Got it? So I can tolerate a bit more sugar than other people because of my genetics. But you can't, because you're probably an ApoE 4.4 or 4.3 or 4.2, and you've got less ability to tolerate. And so, you will have these really highly elevated LDL-C, and total cholesterol. Is what it is. Your trucks, your chylomicron trucks are less. My chylomicron trucks are more, and I have less VLDL trucks. You've got more VLDL trucks than end up VLDL, LDL, IDL. You know what I mean? It's just, I got one type of truck. You got one other type because of genetics. Got it? So anyway, tips, thoughts of 5 years. She has MTHFR, so do I. Dairy requirements, sulfur intolerance, low DAO, and low superoxide dismutase. I suspect that's what you mean. She's allergic to dairy and doesn't like, intolerant to eggs. Been carnivore for almost 2 years. You may have to supplement choline for her. Does she like liver? If she doesn't like liver or crustaceans, they're a good source of a lot of, like to get your B12s and to get, a bit more folate and to get things like that. You've got to eat some of these other foods. But if you're not eating these foods, then you may have to supplement in that regard. So that's the sort of thing that you need to look into. Also, being a very young child, a lot of tribal people tend to put kids much later on solids. They will be breastfeeding for longer. And the reason for that is because bile is really important for better microbiome modulation, and also taurine taking in, because from breast milk you're taking a lot of taurine. It actually helps in producing new brain cells. So it actually, the level of taurine required for a baby in proportion to an adult human is massive. In comparison, that is, and so it can actually have a big effect. Well, calcium, they're sardines. Sardines are an option for calcium, and crustaceans, because they do have far more minerals. If you go to, let me just find it. I find this is a useful site, myfooddata.com. Just not respond. What is it doing? Just bear with me for a sec. Come on. Yep, that's right, clams. Clams are a really good source. And at that younger age, we're really, they're talking about, like in the older age, or adults, about a gram per day. In the younger age, that it can be slightly, around about the 800. milligrams or slightly more. If isn't a big problem, as long as it's coming from food, then the body will regulate it and just excrete the excess. Okay. I'm just setting it up for you. It's they've got like a tool thing, and if I set it up right, I will click in there dairy just for future reference. Obviously, you can ignore that for now. And I'll apply that. I thought that would come in at the top. So these doses are at 100 grams per day. 100 grams, we're talking about 3.53 ounces. Okay, so you could buy dry whey powder, and there's no lactose in there or anything to react or whatever. And so at about 40 something, hold on, let me just do this. There's 2,054 milligrams, which is double the adult requirement. So you only need 50 grams. But if you you're looking at about 40 grams of the whey to basically get that. And if you go further down, you do find things like the hard goat cheese, and that hard goat cheese, like 100 grams, gives all the requirements more or less. And because goat amino acids are very similar to mother's milk, goat cheese is better tolerated compared to cow's cheese and the other stuff. So you should try that as an option. So that's and again, you could try things like yolks as well, because some kids may have a problem sensitivity to the whites, not the yolks. So you got to really play around with these things and see what works. So that's like for all the different carnivore type foods, shrimps, 145 milligrams. Some kids can tolerate yogurt, so so different things of that sort. So it's really playing around with these things and seeing what things can be incorporated. Also, because if they've got an MTHFR issue, the enzyme can be corrected with riboflavin. So you may have to get like there are child supplements of riboflavin, so B2, And that usually is one way if the child's got difficulty with food allergies and can't tolerate things of that sort of stuff, is really important. So just keep that in mind. And do leave me a comment and give me a bit, and or in, if it's a lot of private stuff, I understand, towards the end of next week. So about 8 days from now, I'm going to clear out all my my current emails that I haven't cleared out, and I've just overloaded it deliberately. I'll clear all that out, and at that stage, I'll accept new emails. And you can actually send me an email with a lot of history and a lot of more details, so I can actually give you a proper and a whole lot of links that on a live stream is not practical at the moment. So do that, and I'll be able to give you a much more comprehensive way of getting around it, and all the intolerances and things that the child has got. Hey, Harry, long time no see. I hope you're doing well. Yes, I'm doing well. I wish some of my family... Yeah, anyway, I'm not going to go into it. We're doing better. Anyway. Sarah, how are you? Also, I can say long time no see. Thanks, mate. Hadn't considered deuterium. Many people don't. Many people don't before they rush into doing things. Yeah, I should be in bed. I went to another rock concert. Oh, is that what you did? I might join Harry tomorrow morning. If I have the strength, fair enough. If you don't, look, that's fine. Just recover. It's more important for your family. Which is in a couple of hours from now, which will be... Yes. Anyway, I better cover a few of the other stuff as well. There's been a few super chats today. Thank you, guys. It's like everybody's going, we know that he's been shadow banned and he was demonetized and everything else under the sun. Yes, they did deny me revenue from advertising for many weeks. Anyway, I'm not going to stop my stuff that I put on here. I know they may demonetize me again. They may give me another strike potentially down the track. They get peeved off and annoyed with some of the content that I put and some of the criticisms that I make. But I'm not going to change just to keep them happy. Thanks, Lemmy. That's not the purpose of the channel. My channel isn't here to basically, and luckily, this isn't my prime income. It makes it much easier. I understand other people that are in a much more difficult situation and don't have the same flexibility that I have. I do have an income, and so I can just basically say, yeah, I don't care. I could just do the finger to my lovely dear friends at YouTube. You're welcome. And Ryan's here as well. G'day, Ryan. Thanks for the £5. Oops. So we're down to the last 15 minutes. I'm pulling the plug at 1 o'clock. So let's try and get through some of these quickly. Okay. Are there any dangers of sodium citrate, dissolved phosphate consumption? I can't find a cream without it. I tend to drink a lot of cream. You can't? Have you looked around? Sometimes there are food, like health food shops and all that do have other products. Do look around. Just, check out and see what you can find. they're not the most egregious things. They're not going to. Our bodies can break these things down, and we don't. It's not a big problem. I don't think it's a big problem. It's not like some toxic compound. For cyanide, I'd be concerned, but most of the other stuff, yeah, citrates is not going to cause you a problem. Sodium, once they break down, so I don't get too wound up with some of these things, like some people do, because they don't seem they're not even low-hanging fruit. There are many other things that are low-hanging fruit, and many other things that are more important. I would put deuterium, glycating factors like honey and many other things are way up here as going to cause much more problems to somebody than many of these things. So don't tell him things like that and encourage him, Nathan. Yes. Thank you for putting that up as well. Yes. Yep, Nick's off to bed. Thanks, mate. Yeah, everything's fine. I just had a lot of things to do. Too many things. Had to even sort out some paperwork for a whole lot of things and go to a JP and get certain things signed and stuff like that, and had a lot of things resolving with my trust, and just goes on and all that. And I also got a nasty letter as well to sort out my registration, which they wanted as well. So I've had a lot of things, like just mountainous things that I've either forgot about or neglected because I've been caught up with other things, and a lot of things that come in at once. And do you realise you need to update these details with us, government department? So yeah. Anyway, so nearly there with most of that sort of stuff. It's just getting it all sorted. Never-ending paperwork. Never-ending. What's going on in the world, mate? Too much on my front. Crime chaos is through the roof. Yet, yes, our lovely demonic friends are out there from the World Economic Forum and Bill Gates and his fans, and our dear friend, the hypocrites of the ESG movement, Larry Finn, wonderful guy, absolutely wonderful guy. Yes, you wouldn't want to meet him in an alley at night. Or it would be an opportunity to basically save humanity from such abysmal people. But I'm not recommending anything. There's no personal views of how I feel about these people. Not encouraging anybody to do anything illegal or anything like that whatsoever. I just think that these people are a waste of space on this planet, and do more harm than good. The hypocrite now, what is he doing? Because we know that there is a fight between the Fed and the oil producers. Has been for a long time, and the Fed is losing. And guess what happened? Larry Fink, the only fund manager in the history of the United States, has a private meeting with the board of the Fed. Well, what is he doing there? Oh, that's right. He owns the banks that are shareholders that control the Fed. That's right, because not you Americans don't. It's these bankers that do. And they just do that to you constantly and to the rest of the world. And pretty much Larry realized that it's really hard to win against these damn oil producers. So we've bought Exxon and undermined its global investments. We've done all this sort of stuff and send them on the ESG sort of path of nirvana oblivion for the West. And so now these people have got the upper hand because they're funneling money back through the Western banking system in some areas in order to manipulate their position. So what does Larry do? He gives the head of Aramco, which is the Saudi oil company, the biggest one, the national one that owns, it's like a Goliath. The head of that, the CEO, he gets a board membership on BlackRock. So the enemy is inside the building now. So, yes, is this a lull in their war between the ESG globalist nuts and the oil barons of the world? Time will tell. Yes, an interesting sort of while if you look at the cities where most ESG and woke agendas have been perpetrated, they're in a mess. Crime, chaos is the normality of the day. Absolutely crazy. But yes, that is, yeah. No, I haven't actually looked into it. I haven't looked into it, Pavel. I'll look into it. I won't be able to give a comment until I've investigated to see exactly what they're actually saying, because it could be just bullshit, statistical, hanky-panky. Yes, playing with numbers. And so, yeah. Anyway, so that is my thought on that. I remember when first hit YouTube. Vivid Mouse is here. G'day, Richard. Thanks, mate, for the 17 New Zealand pesetos. I remember when the first hit YouTube, you spoke about pork. I still love pork. I've upped my intake ever since, and it's cheaper than other cuts. Win-win. Yes, it is nice. Look, I always say, what did your ancestors? It's like a friend of mine, her relatives from the north, her mum, from Manchuria, from Inner Mongolia sort of region, northern China originated. She does much better on beef because they consumed a lot of horse meat and stuff like that, which is similar. But her friends that come from Cantonese regions of Hong Kong, they do much better on pork because traditionally they consume more pork and do much better. So their requirement for niacin and thiamine seem to be higher, and they do much better. So there is that individual thing as well. And most Mediterraneans, my parents and great grandparents, they larded. They had goats, but they also larded. They had little pigs. For Dad used to help his mum lard for the year. Produce the lard, pig's fat. So it's if you're most centenarian populations also tend to, Icarians, Okinawans, Sardinians, they tend to also, except the Nagoya Peninsula where the cowboys and it's just beef. So, yes, good stuff, in my personal opinion. Dad recently ultrasound showed a small cyst on his right kidney. How do you get rid of kidney cysts naturally? My dad's cysts have actually reduced by reducing the glycating factors. You've got to get rid of the sugars, guys. You just got to get rid of the sugars, if you really want healthy kidneys. Get rid of the glycation, lower the fructose levels in the diet, and lower the general sugar levels in the diet. It's going to make a big difference. Taurine can help ameliorate, that means reduce, glycation in the body. And there's a number of other things as well. There are a number of the amino acids have anti-glycating effects and a number of other compounds. But you're really, at the end of the day, you can take all these supplements. You've got to eliminate the things that are causing the problem in the first place. And that is, the contraindicated foods. And a lot of people are just, just using the wrong stuff. Oops, better go down here. Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Okay. You got some tech work to do. Fair enough, mate. I know. Yes. Yes, Richard's pretty good. He's a bit like me, an old-fashioned repurposing old systems. I've done that in the past as well. Richard does a lot of that sort of stuff as well. I'll tell you why, Ken. Because they're eating high deuterium foods. That's why. Simple as that. High deuterium foods. And a lot of the modern ones are also consuming a lot of seed oils, which is extremely high. But most of the plant foods that the vegans are consuming are very high in deuterium. It's simple as that. And if you've looked at it in my videos on deuterium, you realize how the nanomotors are busted inside the mitochondria, and then they can't produce enough energy. They signal to the cell. It upregulates oncogenes. It forces the Krebs cycle into reverse. It pulls in deuterium ions from the cytosol into the Krebs cycle and produces, and also drags in through alpha ketoglutarate, more glutamate and stuff like that, and starts producing a lot of lactate because, it can use the lactate to produce more sugar in the liver. That's what it's doing. So in order to inhibit that, obviously you've got to lower the deuterium depleted water to stop that from, to providing that capacity. But on the other hand, you also need to fix up the mitochondria. And that's where taurine can actually help remove the glycation and increase the production of melatonin inside the mitochondria. The only molecule that can actually do it, I haven't done the video yet, but taurine directly increases. It's a cofactor within the enzymatic pathways to produce melatonin inside the mitochondria in order to basically repair, because that's what so all day long, the pineal gland gives you just for the sleep signaling, but the stuff produced not for the cells, but inside the mitochondria, and that is produced requires taurine. And taurine, as it drops off in older age, and in a vegan diet it's very low, you can't produce enough melatonin inside the mitochondria to repair the damn things. So you're damaging them on the one hand and not repairing them. So obviously you're going to be shifting more cells into a senescent state, plus they're not eating enough nutrients to basically support their, because remember, to activate naive T cells, what do you need? Taurine again in the thymus, and vitamin D to create stem cells for the thymus. So if you don't have enough of these, that's the first line of defense. I have actually put a video recently about explosive cancers, how COVID reduces T cells, and then you get these explosive cancers in people. There's a doctor, a British doctor, that's actually been talking about it, how, that as well can actually cause this reduction in T cells. This is the reason why I use taurine as a supplement when there's, respiratory infections around, and maintain my vitamin D levels in order to basically make sure that my T cells are primed, are in a good nick to be able to kill off anything that comes through the body. And so that also means that T cells And that's the other thing that I'll talk about earlier about interleukin 6, upregulating interleukin 6 with TA1 peptide. So that's another method to push up the number of T cells to basically kill off the cancer cells. The problem is a lot of people are getting, due to the continuous jab of the hut thing, not only affecting the microbiome with their bifidobacteria and all that and causing other problems and the lactobacillus, but they're also reducing the number of T cells, T lymphocytes. That's a problem, and that's creating a whole lot of other issues. Yes, I've had people recently come to me with those sort of conditions. It's very hard. So yeah, that's really one of the reasons. And people are completely oblivious to this, to the way these mechanisms work. But yeah, we do need to be able to produce melatonin all day long inside the mitochondria. And we need those to support those enzymatic pathways inside the mitochondria to produce the stuff to repair the electron chains and repair the nanomotor that rotates to produce ATP, so which is the currency of energy in our body. So if we don't look after the mitochondria, we're going to get into greater risk, and vegans just don't do that. They really put themselves in a vulnerable space. So, you know, and as you know, as an Orthodox Christian, a fellow human, I feel for them as well. I'm against their contraindicated diet. I'm not against the people. You know, I love them, and I hope, you know, and when they do come to me and ask for help, I try and help them as much as possible. I don't, you know, want to see them, you know, harming themselves. So it's out of, you know, love that I care about them, and I criticize their ways. You know, the people that I think are really, you know, demonic in their thinking are probably people like, you know, Mick the Vegan and some of the others, Hench, and people like that, or even, you know, there are some worse characters out there. You know, Richard's one of them. He's just, you know, a Canadian guy, just completely utterly, you know, he's a nutcase, you know. So, but even him, I don't hate. I don't hate him as a human. I just hate the and despise the belief systems, which is just, you know, it's just a really evil ideology that's really harming. And I always say to people, I try to wake these people up. I say, show me, please show me one multi-generational vegan society anywhere in the world that has ever existed. None of them do. None of them exist. You could do vegetarianism. You can use dairy, eggs, and you can use basically crustaceans and things like that. Or some people also do fish. Not always, some do, just crustaceans, and they won't do fish. So they get their minerals, they get their B12 from crustaceans, they can get all these other nutrients. And so they're going to have less problems. But, you know, their vegan diet now has gone, you know, and even the general plant-based, you know, the vegetarian side has gone far more towards plants, even more than in the past. Because I've done like a video in the blue zones, and I do cover the Loma Linda people, and 50% of their diet was dairy, you know. And Grundy had actually seen the food guidelines in the hospital in the Loma Linda. You know, he explained exactly what it was. You know, add to that, you know, the eggs and some of the seafood, and you nearly 2/3 of it's animal based. So completely what in contradiction to what these modern day vegans are actually claiming. They don't even know what the diet was that these people were doing back then. But go now to Loma Linda and see how sick the population is that have shifted further away from those animal foods and are consuming far more, less eggs, less dairy, less seafood, and are consuming far more plants. They are way sicker. Nobody's talking about a blue zone anymore amongst those people, because in their mid 50s and 40s they're getting very sick. So completely nonsense, all this sort of stuff. It's this ideology. It's crazy ideology. You just have to look at Hitler. He was a vegetarian, and back then they weren't as severely restricting animal foods. He was still eating dairy, eggs, and stuff like that. And he had Parkinson's. He shook. His hand shook. He used to try to hide it by keeping it behind his back, but it was quite clear, obviously, for anybody to see it. So that is a neurological thing. Probably had other things. He was a bit of a very criminally minded person. It seems that those sort of people that have these species inappropriate religious sort of crazy ideas tend to also have really weird sort of stuff. But anyway, that's for another day to discuss his Gnostic ideas, because he was a Gnostic. Yes. I'm not saying he's a Satanist, that he was a Satanist, but, maybe Himmler was a Satanist, definitely a pagan Satanist, Gnostic, believed in the God of power, so yes. But that's for, as I said, a very different day on that issue. But pretty much, these extremes of both left and right tend to have, embrace the same food types, plant-based and stuff like that. You'll get in the extreme left and the extreme right. And you'll also get these sort of Gnostic belief systems, because even atheism sort of has a Gnostic, we have all the knowledge, so these people tend to gravitate to really extreme thinking, and they pay for it, as you've pointed out, and I've seen stats as well that, and some people that I know in Hobart as well, both friends and even some relatives that have gone plant-based, having a lot of problems, health problems and stuff like that. But it just seems the cognitive dissonance is so strong, it's really hard to get them to think differently. How much damage do they need to do to their life? Lose their life completely sometimes? Anyway, it is 1:10, and I did say 1 o'clock. I have to pull the plug now. I did notice this, and I had to reply to this one. Thanks, Ken, for putting it up. A lot of people are completely unaware of this, and it will become a bigger problem as people shift away to 100% plant-based. And once that happens, the health, catastrophe that's going to befall is going to be horrendous. So yes, the combo of magnesium and taurine can really help. That's true. Yeah, it can. I've one other guy recently. He thanked me in a comment. He calmed down quite a bit taking. He probably had sufficient magnesium from his diet. Sometimes, taurine will eventually normalize the magnesium levels, as I said, because it's an osmolyte. It regulates the ions, and eventually you will get to a homeostasis. You won't need it. It'll be a waste of money. You'll just be excreting it, the magnesium part. And he actually found that his homeostasis with his taurine, his mind calmed down. He was much better because it affects GABA A, and so it's a bit like lithium. It actually calms you down. It makes you much more comfortable in your own skin. His knee, and within 3 months of doing high doses of leucine and taurine together, he was able to fix that. No more pain in the knee from his injury, and he had been on Carnivore for about, I think, 3 years, did he say, or 5? I can't remember now. Been on, no resolution. He still had, he was getting improvements in his knee, but not very much. Through the high doses, amplified the protein synthesis inside the actual bone and sorted it. Remember, my old man, leucine and taurine, remember, got hit, 89, he'll be in January, 89. 3 meters thrown by 4-wheel drive, not a fracture or a broken bone. Find me one vegan that can claim that after 5 years. They'd shatter into multiple pieces. I don't want them ill, I have no ill will towards them. I don't want to see them harm themselves in that regard. But their contraindicated diet is actually making them frail and weak in their bodies. Or they're eating oils and fats of the modern stuff. They're doing the sad version of the vegan diet and actually becoming more deranged and sicker than even the sad dieters, and they become the obese vegans. It's a terrible state of affairs that we're heading towards, Polly, thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it. Andrew, yes. You're still so far down under, Harry. Thanks, Andrew. What kind of people would milk sugar be bad for? Milk sugar. God. Unless you've got a lactose intolerance and you're not overdoing it, because even a couple of glasses of milk, you're going to be below the 25. You're still in ketosis, so you're going to be below the, because you're talking about, half a litre, 2 glasses of milk. So, and usually you have about, about 3.8 in full cream milk we're talking about now, whole milk. It's about 3.8 times 5, we'll do it 250. So it's usually about 244 mils. We'll do it for a cup, 250, we'll round it off. So 5 gives you 19 grams. And remember, galactose, the half of it, which is galactose, has to go through 4 enzymatic pathways in order to be converted to glucose. There is no fructose in milk, in lactose. So it's galactose is one of them, which converts to glucose as well. It takes 4 enzymatic steps, which means you only get about 50% immediately. So if you're getting 2 glasses of milk, you're getting 19. So you're getting 9 and a half. And then the other 9.5 will come slower via enzymatic pathways to be utilized. So if you're doing a bit of physical stuff, it's just like that, gone. Not going to be a big thing, but some people can have intolerances. We got to be careful. Anyway, thanks, Oggy. Oops. Drop me a line. And with some more details and stuff like that. I do intend to do some videos on that sort of stuff. There's a couple of people at work that I need to provide some information as well, having issues. Todd, not a problem. You're welcome. There'll be tonight, in about less than 5 hours from now, there'll be the Eurasia one. So for those night owls in Europe, get to bed so you can be on that one as well. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate you all being here. I better get my bloody laundry out because I had it ran it on the drying cycle. So I need to get it out there and actually hang it all up and then get over to Dad to have lunch. So I am out of here. Thank you very much for all your support. It was exceptional today. Wasn't expecting this amount of support, but I do appreciate you coming and providing your support to me, and also a whole lot of your interesting questions. Now, if I haven't answered your question, because it takes time to get through the questions, and some people say you go too deep into them, but sometimes you have to. Snapstud, thanks, mate. Just leave a comment and I'll answer it. I always answer my comments within, if it's not immediate, it's usually within 1 or 2 days. And if I miss anything, I usually go back once a month all through my comments list and see what I haven't actually marked. So there is, like, within the platform, there's a special place where I can go through and I can see the ones that I haven't actually dealt with. So thanks, Lukey. Appreciate it. Yes, it is running again, which is fine. So okay, maybe he's right with the church's youth group. Fantastic. Good to see that you're hanging around with some really good people with faith in their heart. Fantastic. Anyway, chat with you later, Lukey. I have actually mentioned the Discord, so you may have some people coming in and having a bit of a chat about Hashimoto's thyroiditis. The stuff that we talked about in the past that you did, and so they may want somebody that's got a bit, so they'll come and ask you, and just let Necro know that some people are going to be asking her for her on the the file that she's got on the protocol on the gut reset type thing. So they'll come and ask her. So I'm sending some people in your direction, in both your directions. Keep you guys busy. And thanks for all the what you and Necro do on the Discord. That's a really important asset for the community. So I have to thank you as well. I need to turn up more often. I do turn up occasionally. I'll quickly answer a whole lot of questions and then move on. So I don't get dragged into too many things, because there's only limited hours that I have in the day. So that's why I do it in certain irregular hours, and it's deliberate. Sorry about that. I'll have to come into some other longer session at some stage. Thanks, Saska. Appreciate it. Anyway, guys, I am out of here. Isidoro, thanks, mate. And Lukey, as always, take care, and we'll chat later. I'm out of here. See you guys. And I'm off to the laundry.